It is 7:30 in the east, 4:30 in the west, and for most of the country, there is still time to vote. But polls have just closed in 3 more states, including the key states of North Carolina and Ohio. Still no call in Virginia, and it's still close in Indiana. But we are projecting that John McCain picks up West Virginia. It is election night in America.
CBS News election night coverage continues. Here again is Katie Couric.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to CBS News election headquarters here in New York. I am Katie Couric, along with Jeff Greenfield and Bob Schieffer. We should introduce the folks who are covering the Senate and House races, as well as some gubernatorial races for us tonight. To my left, Eric. We have Byron Pitts and Cheryl Atkinson, and Cheryl will be talking to you momentarily. But first, I want to talk to Jeff and Bob about what's going on right now. So Indiana, too close to call as we see. Virginia, undecided. Ohio, undecided. North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, all undecided. Let's talk about some good news really quickly for John McCain. West Virginia, a state with a lot of evangelical Christians, gun owners, problematic for Barack Obama because 1 in 5 Democrats during the primary said race was an issue in their decision. So this is an expected victory for John McCain.
It is. It used to be solidly Democratic. Michael Dukakis carried West Virginia, but the issue of things like guns, it's a coal country. They didn't like Al Gore on the environment. They felt that John Kerry was really not one of their own. So this was not a state that I think that Barack Obama ever expected to win.
All right, let's talk about North Carolina, can we, Bob? Because
Sure.
that is an extremely interesting race. The complexion of North Carolina has changed dramatically. A lot more young transplants. Charlotte is a huge banking center. The location, the home of Wachovia, which of course we know what happened to Wachovia, and the Research Triangle with lots of young professionals in the pharmaceutical and technology business. That used to be solidly Republican. It hasn't voted for a Democrat since Jimmy Carter in 1976, but now that state is in play.
Well, very much in play. And you're right, Katie, when you talk about the changing demographics there are all these new people moving into the state. And you also have, though, this large African-American community there. All of these new African-American voters who've been registered.
600,000, right?
600,000, I think that's right. 500,600,000. This state is changing. And again, you go back to, did the McCain campaign understand what was happening there? What we know for sure is the Obama people understood what was happening, and they poured the resources into that state. But again, a state where the economy made a difference here, and the Obama people recognized that there was change in the air. They moved in there and took advantage of it.
All right, let's take a look at the North Carolina Senate race that is going on right now. Byron, this is probably, I would say, the nastiest Senate race
without question.
in America. Of course, Republican icon Elizabeth Dole, who was elected in 2002, is running against Kay Hagan, a 5-term state senator from Greensboro, North Carolina. Tell us a little more about this race.
Katie, this may be the best example tonight of the Bush effect you were talking about earlier. And remember, this is Jesse Helms' old seat. Jesse Helms, the symbol of the old South, the old Republican Party. The fact that Elizabeth Dole is in trouble speaks volumes about the issues facing the Republican Party across the country. Here's the matchup. As you said, Elizabeth Dole. She has the champagne resume of American politics. Her husband, a former presidential candidate. She's a former cabinet member. Her opponent, Kay Hagan, has more of a Carolina sweet tea resume. She has a law degree from Wake Forest. She's a soccer mom. She's a Sunday school teacher. And a year ago, she was reluctant about running because it seemed that Dole seemed invincible. But
right, wasn't she the Democrats' 4th choice or something like that?
Oh, absolutely,
I don't want to
absolutely.
make her feel bad, but she wasn't their first choice, right?
Sure, it's true, because they thought at one point that they just couldn't win this seat, but now it's in play. Katie, I want to show you some exit polling from North Carolina, all good indicators for Kay Hagan. Looking at men voters, Kay Hagan's winning men voters. She picked up 48% versus 47% for Elizabeth Dole. Hagan also wins amongst women. This is key. She picks up 55% of the women vote versus 40% for Elizabeth Dole. those are good signs for the Democrats. This is one of the seats they targeted, and they stand a real good chance of winning.
And we should mention really quickly, the reason why I said it was very nasty is because of a recent campaign commercial Elizabeth Dole put out against Kay Hagan, accusing her of basically being a godless American, correct?
Exactly. That she pals around with people who are anti-God. And Katie, I got to tell you, I have family from North Carolina, and there's some places you don't go with people, and you don't question someone's faith. She pushed back the very next day. I talked to some friends in Eastern North Carolina who say that ad really hurt Dole.
All right. Let's go to Dan Bartlett, our CBS News political analyst. Dan, because I'm sorry I cut you off earlier to go to David Plouffe. Don't take it personally, okay?
Never do, Katie,
but I'm thinking about President Bush, because not only is this a difficult environment for John McCain, given President Bush's low approval ratings, but he's turning out to be a pretty negative force in a number of these Senate races. I know he campaigned something like 5 times for Elizabeth Dole in 2002. This year, it's sort of like, where's Waldo? He is nowhere to be seen. Are you surprised that your former boss is such a negative in this environment, not only for John McCain, but for the entire Republican Party, perhaps?
Well, Katie, obviously President Bush has made some decisions during his presidency that were controversial at times, and he has become a divisive political figure in that regard. But I'd also say that the context here that was mentioned by Jeff earlier in the broadcast was that it's hard for any party to earn a 3rd term. I mean, it hasn't been done but only once in the last half century. So those traditional historical trends weren't going Republicans' way as it was. And on top of that, obviously, the Democratic Party for more than 2 years has made it a concerted effort. In some estimates, that they spent over $100 million last year alone on negative ads against President Bush. So the climate's not good for President Bush. I think the McCain campaign tried to make a pragmatic choice to keep him on the sidelines. I think some people will debate whether he could have been helpful in some of these more conservative states to turn out the vote. That'll be stuff that we'll look at in the days to come.
I know that Dan, President Bush isn't a man of a lot of introspection, and I think he's sort of proud of that. I mean, he says he doesn't like to get on the couch, but how is he feeling about the way this has unfolded?
Well, you know, he's by the very nature of being the president and being involved in politics as long as he is, he's very interested in what's going on in the presidential race and some of these specific races in the Senate and the House. You know, so he's a political junkie in that regard and is following it very closely and wants, obviously, his party to do well. But at the same time, he also understands that there are larger trends that take place in American politics, that realignments like this, potentially, as we're seeing one of those tonight, happen almost every 10 years or so. So it's kind of the nature of politics. And he understands that his party, going forward, is going to have to find new leaders, both obviously who will run on the national stage, but just as importantly, in the governorships in the Senate and the House, and reform the message and come back and fight hard for the next in the next cycle.
All right, Dan, let's reset the political stage for us, and particularly with the presidential campaign really quickly for those of you who may just be tuning in. Eric, if we can take a shot of the touchscreen on my desk. As you can see, the states in red have gone to John McCain, Kentucky and West Virginia. Little itty-bitty Vermont, the home of Ben and Jerry's and Howard Dean. Those 3 electoral votes go to Barack Obama. All those states in white, though, some of those key states, in particular, North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, too close to call in the state of Indiana. We can't project a winner in any of those states. Georgia was supposed to go handily to Senator John McCain, but we still can't project a winner. We don't have enough information, though. You can see our percentages seem to favor him. And South Carolina, we're waiting for enough data from there as well. Let's go to Anthony Mason, because he's got some interesting exit poll information about what Dan and I were talking about, and that is the Bush effect on some of these voters. Anthony?
Yeah, Katie, we're looking at the Bush effect in Virginia, which is a state that President Bush won in both 2000 and 2004 with about 53% of the vote. But his approval rating, which 4 years ago in Virginia was at 55%, has plummeted, cut almost in half to 27%. Now, we wanted to see, whether there was a drag there. And, of course, Senator Obama said that McCain was going to be 4 more years of Bush. He called him, not a maverick, but a sidekick. And we found that 52% of voters in Virginia, more than half, say they believe McCain would continue President Bush's policies. Where did those voters go? They went overwhelmingly for Barack Obama. 89% 50%, in fact. So it appears that Senator McCain in Virginia, at least, has not been able to outrun the shadow of a president whose popularity ratings are at historic lows. Katie?
All right, Anthony Mason, thank you so much, Anthony. Well, of course, when David Plouffe, the Obama campaign manager, spoke with us earlier, he talked about expanding the electorate, and one of the key targets were young people. Kelly Kobaya is at Florida State University with some students there. And Kelly, tell us about what students are telling you. You know, there was some concern that they wouldn't actually get out and vote because young people traditionally have not. But what have you found at Florida State?
Well, first of all, Katie, if there's any doubt about youth voter interest in this, take a look at the crowds here. There are thousands at this stadium in FSU. The marching band is here all for a watch party. They're telling me things like, you know, I've never voted before, I've never felt involved before, but this time I felt like the candidates, particularly Barack Obama, were really reaching out to me in places that I go to, on the internet, on Facebook sites, and they also felt like they had a civic duty this time. They're concerned about the economy. They know that when they graduate from college, they're not sure what's going to happen, if they're going to be able to get jobs. And for those reasons, they were lining up at the polls at 7 o'clock this morning and casting ballots. Now, whether or not that voter turnout is higher than it was in 2004, we have yet to see.
All right, Kelly Kobaya. Kelly, thank you. You fit right in with all those young people, those college students behind you. By the way, we should mention that young people between the ages of 18 and 29 were 17% of the electorate in 2004. You've got to believe, Jeff and Bob, those numbers are going to skyrocket if anecdotal evidence is any indication.
That's certainly what the Obama campaign is hoping for.
I don't think there's any question about it. And we will find out. We'll get the evidence of that as more of the polling comes in. One thing we already know, young people do like to be on TV.
Yeah, obviously, right? Even if they look kind of foolish doing so. Let's talk about Virginia and Indiana, just because they are so key, and some of these other states that are undecided. Let's talk about Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, and North Carolina, if we could. We talked about the changing nature of North Carolina, but we haven't talked that much about Ohio, which decided the election in 2004 for George W. Bush.
Let's start with Ohio and then move to a couple of the other states where the polls were closed.
And where your map is situated.
Shouldn't be a total loss, as my grandmother would have said. Ohio is the state that decided the 2004 election. It is always competitive. We've said this till people probably are tired of it. No Republican has ever been elected without carrying Ohio, and John Kennedy was the last Democrat to. And Ohio is a case where those white working-class Democrats in Akron and Canton, that we'll be looking at a little later, are critical, as well as running up huge African-American pluralities in and around Cleveland. If we go to Virginia, which you mentioned, I want to show you what happened in 2004, the state that Bush carried by 8 points. This is Loudoun County, right across the Potomac, that red one of the wealthiest, fastest-growing counties. Right now, according to preliminary exit poll data, Obama's doing well throughout the North. He's also doing well in the Southeast. There are some African-American pockets there, but we're talking about, this is your turf, Katie. You know this turf. This is Virginia Beach. Lots of military retirees, the home of Pat Robertson. And throughout the South, Obama is, if the exit poll data is right, he is performing as he thought he needed to. So while we don't have information in terms of hard numbers, the preliminary data suggests that Obama in Virginia is doing what he has to. And if we take a quick look at Indiana, I'll just, if we can move this map westward.
Wow, that's magical.
Isn't that cool? Here again is the key. We know that Obama will do very well up in Lake County. Gary, Indiana, heavily African-American, borders Illinois, so in effect they've seen the coverage of Obama as senator, and he'll do well in Indianapolis. But the question for Obama is whether he can hold these margins down in rural and smaller towns all through Indiana, which have been going Republican for year after year. That's what we're going to be looking for.
All right, let's go to Russ Mitchell, if we could, you guys, because he is at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. Russ, first tell us the significance of that church.
Katie, this was Martin Luther King's church. It was his father's church as well. And this could be quite an emotional night for the 1,000 or so folks who are coming here this evening. Just a few minutes ago, people started going inside the church for an election night watch party. They're hoping, of course, this will turn into a Barack Obama victory party. Among the people who will be here tonight, civil rights icons like John Lewis, who back in 1961 was beaten bloody while trying to desegregate the South with the Freedom Riders. Andrew Young, of course, Martin Luther King, one of Martin Luther King's lieutenants, as well as a host of people who you've never heard of before, but will all tell you stories about having to drink out of so-called colored water fountains, having to sit in the back of the bus, being kicked out of restaurants, all because they are black. Many of them will also tell you they never thought they would see in their lifetime a day like this, a day when a black man could possibly become president of the United States. Well, that day and that possibility is here. And as I said, this could be quite an emotional night here at the church, Ebenezer Baptist Church in downtown Atlanta. Katie, we're going to go inside and get the sights and sounds for you, and we'll see you later this evening.
Okay, perfect, Russ. Thank you so much. And we're going to take a quick shot in Chicago of folks filing into Grant Field, where Barack Obama is expected to speak later tonight. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about some all-important House races and the goals in Congress in a moment. We want to remind you, John McCain leads Barack Obama right now 13-3 in the battle for those all-important 200 electoral votes, which clinch the presidency. It's still very early, but key states that could tell the tale are closing at the top of the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back to CBS News election headquarters here in New York. The polls have closed in several states, and now CBS News can project a winner in the state of South Carolina. No surprise, John McCain won the primary here, possibly because Mitt Romney and Mike Huckabee split the conservative vote, but South Carolina delivers its 8 electoral votes to Senator John McCain tonight. So taking a look at the national map, and we can do that, Eric, if you want, on my touch screen. John McCain has 21 electoral votes. Barack Obama has 3. But as you can see, there are a number of states that, like Indiana, too close to call. Ohio, undecided at this point in time. Virginia, undecided at this point in time, as well as North Carolina and Georgia, all working toward that magic number of 270 electoral votes. I misspoke. If all you history students are listening to me, I made a mistake, and that's so emblazoned in my brain at this point. I don't know how I did it. Meanwhile, we're going to go to Cheryl Atkinson now, who's been waiting patiently to tell us about the goals for the House of Representatives, where 435 seats are up, right, Cheryl?
Every single one of them. And in the House, there is a subtext that picks up on some of the themes and trends of the presidential campaign. Democrats expect to pick up a lot of seats tonight. Both sides agree on that. But just how many is the question. So we went to good sources, the best sources on both sides, to get it in their own words. And here's what they told us. If they win something like 16 to 19 seats, Democrats say that's just an okay night. Their expectations are very high. Believe it or not, Republicans told us if they lose only that many, they'll be dancing on the table. 20 to 25, Democrats tell us that's a good night for them. Republicans say that's awful. And 26 and above, that's an earthquake, and that's a real possibility tonight, whereas Republicans say that's sheer disaster. The Democrats are on their way. We're told in Northern Virginia District 11, CBS News projects that the Democrat there, Gerald Connolly, will take out the Republican challenger, meaning Democrats have picked up that open Republican seat. They flipped it over in that state, in that district that, as you said, is trending more and more Democratic.
All right, Cheryl Atkinson. Cheryl, thanks so much. Anthony Mason, meanwhile, has some exit polling information coming out of North Carolina, which, as we mentioned, is undecided at this hour. Extremely competitive. Hasn't voted for a Democrat since 1976. What are voters saying there, Anthony?
Katie, this is a state that President Bush took, cleanly with 56% of the vote 4 years ago. And we wanted to see, he did that largely by getting a huge percentage of white voters. He took 73% of the white vote. John Kerry only got 27% of the white vote in North Carolina in 2004. But look what's happening there. Barack Obama has gained significant support. He's still way behind McCain, but he's doing 10 points better than John Kerry did in North Carolina 4 years ago. What's significant is that you partner that with how he's doing among black voters, where he's getting 97% of the black vote in North Carolina. That's also more than 10 points better than John Kerry did 4 years ago. And you realize why he's making a race of this state, which went, solidly for George Bush in both of the last 2 elections. Katie?
All right, Anthony, thanks so much. Chip Reed is in Phoenix. And Chip, I know that there are 4 states specifically the McCain campaign is keeping a very close eye on tonight. Tell us about those.
That's right, Katie. They told us there are 4 states that will, quote, tell the story early. Those 4 states are Indiana, Kentucky, Georgia, and Virginia. They're states that you and Bob Schieffer and Jeff Greenfield have been talking about quite a bit. And what they said is, in Indiana, they need to win. They say they will win. They say only in the past week have they really shown the progress they needed to win. Now they're confident they're going to win, or at least they said so earlier today. They're probably biting their nails over the numbers that they've seen so far. Kentucky, they need to win by 10 points, and it's right around that margin now. If they lose Kentucky by significantly less than 10 points, that's a bad sign. Georgia, they absolutely have to win. If they don't win there, it's really bad news. And finally, Kentucky, really interesting. They say they've been 6 to 8 points down in Kentucky. Last night, they polled it 3 points down. They think it's moving in their direction. They hope it gets to the point where the exit polls are about even. If that's the case, they think it could go into the night. It could be 3 or 4 a.m. before Virginia is called, and if that happens, they think they could well win it, and that could be good news. So as of a few hours ago, at least, that was what they were hoping for. Those 4 states, Indiana, Kentucky, Georgia, and Virginia, those are the states they're really watching closely to see where this thing goes. They said if they do well in those states, it could be a long night. If they do poorly, it could be over early.
So
Katie?
It was Virginia, Chip, where you said that in recent days, the McCain campaign believes they were gaining ground.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. Went from 6 to 8 points down to 3 points down last night, and they think they're going to do better than that.
All right, Chip Reed, thanks. Meanwhile, let's go to Dean Reynolds. And Dean, I understand that 70% of the money Barack Obama raised, which was what, $630 million, actually was used in red states.
Yeah, that is the amazing statistic, and it shows you the weight that he could throw around, the financial weight that he could throw around in this campaign. I mean, let's look at New Hampshire. He outspent McCain in New Hampshire during the last week of October 10-1. And now New Hampshire looks very good for Obama. Indiana, similarly, he outspent McCain by incredible margins. And as a result, he drummed up crowds like 35,000 in Indianapolis, 40,000 in Highland, Indiana, right next to my hometown of Munster, Indiana. He really spent well this huge treasury that he had, and he focused it on these red states, and he forced McCain to spend in those red states. And that is called playing defense, Katie.
And real quickly, Dean, this Grant Field behind you is really, really filling up, isn't it?
It is, and they're expecting tens of thousands of people within the Grant Park, but then a whole bunch more on the periphery of Grant Park. It's going to be a wild night in Chicago.
All right, thanks, Dean. Well, fasten your seatbelts, because coming up at the top of the hour, the polls close in 2 more states that John McCain needs desperately, Florida and Pennsylvania. You're watching Election Night on CBS. Welcome back, everyone. As FDR once reminded Americans, the ultimate rulers of our democracy are the voters. And tonight, the voters are having their say. The polls have just closed in 15 more states. That's 24 in all now. And the headline is, well, there's still no call in a number of key battleground states, including Florida, Pennsylvania, and Missouri, where polls just closed, as well as Virginia, Ohio, North Carolina, and Indiana. Barack Obama has a 2-1 lead over John McCain in the early electoral vote count on election night 2008.
CBS News election night coverage continues. Here again is Katie Couric.
Well, we've told you everything we do not know at this hour, where the races are still undecided, but we can project the winner in a number of states. So let's get started with that. Well, no surprise here. Barack Obama wins his home state of Illinois, and it's 21 electoral votes. And New Jersey, which has been Democratic since 1992, is again tonight. Barack Obama, our projected winner there. No one in our audience will be shocked when we tell you Massachusetts goes to Barack Obama. And the state of Tennessee, so red it denied native son Al Gore the vote in the year 2000 when he ran for president. Barack Obama, CBS News estimates, wins in Maryland. And Connecticut, which is the home state of staunch McCain supporter Joe Lieberman, the wealthiest state in the country, that goes to Barack Obama. Oklahoma, the Sooner state, Republicans have been doing well there for years, and it goes into the McCain column tonight. And Maine, it has 2 moderate Republican senators, but tonight in the presidential race, it goes Democratic. And New Hampshire, Hillary Clinton won the primary here. John McCain's candidacy was revived. He said Mac is back, but tonight that victory is handed to Barack Obama. And Delaware, Joe Biden's home state, of course, goes to the Obama-Biden ticket. And a strong African-American turnout pushes Barack Obama to victory in the nation's capital. Florida, though, as you can see, with its 27 electoral votes, the highest number of votes of any swing state, that is undecided at this point in time. Decided, of course, the 2000 election, famously, controversially. As you can see, 39 electoral votes for John McCain right now, 81 for Barack Obama. And all those white states on our map are either undecided or simply too close to call. So also, we should mention Pennsylvania. Undecided at this hour, the all-important state of Pennsylvania. So these key battleground states keep adding up, and we just don't know what's happening there. But Pennsylvania is critical, certainly for John McCain.
It absolutely is. They've put all their resources in terms of trying to take a state away from the Democrats into Pennsylvania, because they believe if they take Pennsylvania out of the Democratic column, their path to win is much easier or less difficult. We have some preliminary data that I can characterize out of Pennsylvania. Unsurprisingly, Barack Obama is running up a huge majorities in Philadelphia, heavily Democratic, heavily African-American. Also in these affluent suburbs around Philadelphia, they used to be Republican 20 years ago. They are now Democratic. He is also, and this may be critical, doing well up here in the Northeast. That's where Scranton, Pennsylvania is. Hillary Clinton hails from there. Her family did. That's where Joe Biden hails from. Coal country. If white working class voters in Pennsylvania are to defect to John McCain, that's where it would happen. One last thing. This is what's called, Katie, the T. Very sloppy T. That whole middle of Pennsylvania is traditionally very Republican. It seems to be Republican this year, but perhaps by not enough margins, the kind of margins the McCain people were hoping. That's what we can say now without going overboard.
All right, we want to mention, in addition to those undecided states of Florida and Pennsylvania, in terms of recent poll closings or the polls that just closed at this hour, Missouri put that in undecided as well. The Show Me State has determined or picked the right presidential candidate in every presidential race since 1900, except for in 1956, but that's undecided at this hour. Meanwhile, Anthony Mason has some interesting exit poll information that's coming out of the Sunshine State. What are voters saying there, Anthony?
Katie, Florida, about 15% of the vote in Florida is Hispanic, and it went for George Bush 4 years ago. I want to take a look at what's happening down here today, because 4 years ago, George Bush got 56% of the Hispanic vote in Florida. But take a look. Obama has turned this around. He's gotten 55% this time, almost exactly flipping that number. Nationally, Obama appears to be getting about 68% of the Hispanic vote. So he's not as strong in Florida as he is nationally, but he's winning there, and that's a very encouraging sign for him in the Sunshine State. Katie?
All right, Anthony, thank you. In fact, Barack Obama has been doing exceedingly well with Hispanics. That's one of the voter demographics that were targeted by the Obama campaign. And that's because the Republicans, during that whole immigration debate on Capitol Hill, they really turned off a lot of Hispanic voters, Bob.
I think they really did. But, you know, this is very important for Barack Obama, because remember back to the primaries, Barack Obama was having a hard time getting Hispanic votes. And we were talking about things like the brown-black divide and would Hispanics vote for an African American? And we're seeing tonight that they are. So I think that's very important. But I think going back to Pennsylvania, Katie. You know, and as Jeff was pointing out, and what we can see from these exit polls so far, things appear to be going pretty well for Barack Obama in Pennsylvania. This was the one state that the McCain people thought they might steal away. They thought they had their best chance to get Pennsylvania. If they don't get Pennsylvania, if it does go to Barack Obama, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for John McCain to win when we get to the end of the night. He just almost has to get Pennsylvania.
And this was the one state, it was barely blue in 2004. I think John Kerry won by 2.5% or
yes,
something like that, Jeff.
Less than 3 points by running up those margins in Philadelphia and the suburbs. And Bob is exactly right. We've kind of been talking about this a lot in the days leading up to election night. You take Pennsylvania and keep it in Barack Obama's column, and what we think we know is going to be happening in some of those later states, at least where Obama has a lead, and you scratch your head and say, all right, where do the 270 electoral votes come from? That's why they made Pennsylvania their target. By the way, there are some Republicans who are saying, you know, if Tom Ridge, the former governor of Pennsylvania, had been the running mate, that might have been a little bit different in Pennsylvania.
Well, you know who said that? Tom Ridge said that. Tom Ridge himself said it might be different. But, you know, Sarah Palin spent so much time in Pennsylvania.
11 stops over the last 3 days.
The governor said he might start sending her a state income tax form. She was there so much.
That's right. And John McCain made 5 stops over 2 days in the state of Pennsylvania. But if I could, Jeff, I just want to get back to Hispanics just for a moment, because it's ironic in a way that John McCain sponsored this comprehensive immigration reform bill along with Ted Kennedy. Right. And it was a pathway to citizenship. A lot of Republicans criticized it a lot, and he kind of backed off on that, and people felt, immigration advocates felt like he really had abandoned the issue, despite the fact that he kind of shaped this legislation.
The primary base of the Republican Party was very strongly for much more restrictive policies. The other thing that I was told by one of the experts when I went out to New Mexico was, yes, that's an important thing, but if you think the economy is a big issue in general, for Hispanics, the economy became an overwhelming issue, which is why New Mexico, look, it's a neighboring state to Arizona. We thought that John McCain would be competitive there. He's a war hero. There's a very strong military tradition in New Mexico, and a lot of Hispanics have culturally conservative values, but the economy in New Mexico pushed a lot of the Hispanics in Barack Obama's direction.
And when you came around down to it, immigration became the dog that didn't bark in this campaign. You heard nothing about it. In none of the debates did it ever come up. It was the one issue that in that last debate that I was hoping to get to that I didn't get to. Neither candidate talked about it. I think neither of them really saw much to gain by talking about it.
And remember, John McCain decided that border security needed to come before a pathway to citizenship for the immigrants in this country. And again, that turned people
went away as far as the candidates were concerned.
And when Barack Obama campaigned in Espanola, which is a small town to the north of Albuquerque and Santa Fe, where Democrats usually don't go, he said, in so many words, vote your numbers. And there was an enormous effort in New Mexico to get Hispanics in the more rural part of the state to go out and vote. We will find out if that works in a couple hours.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick look, if we could, at the popular vote, as we can see on our boards tonight. And there you have it, 46% John McCain, 53% Barack Obama. John McCain has picked up 39 electoral votes, 81 for Barack Obama. Still several states, if we take a look, Eric, at the national map. Eric's our director, by the way, if you're wondering if I'm just talking to myself. We can see all those states in white, still undecided or too close to, yes, my special friend, too close to call, including the state we've been talking an awful lot about, the Keystone State, which John McCain was hoping to be the key to not, if necessarily a victory, but certainly his new strategy, hoping to flip the state back to the Republicans. I understand we're joined by Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell. Is that right? Hey, Governor, how are you?
Hi, Katie. How are you?
Nice to see you. I know you were expressing some trepidation in recent days about the Democrats in Pennsylvania, a little concerned about Sarah Palin's ubiquitous presence in your state, not to mention John McCain. How are you feeling tonight?
Well, they were there so much in the last 5 weeks here in Pennsylvania, we were going to charge them state income tax, Katie. But I think that made a difference. I think retail politics still works at a level, certainly ignited or reignited their base. But the turnout in the Philadelphia area, particularly the Philadelphia suburbs, is so overwhelming that I don't think there's any way that Senator McCain can win the state. Just to give you an example, in Haverford, which is Delaware County, suburbs of Philadelphia, The last 3 divisions I got at 7:30 had 85, 88, and 90% turnout already with a half hour left to go. Just an incredible turnout that's going to bury Senator McCain, I think.
I know that, of course, Hillary Clinton won the primary in Pennsylvania, someone who you were supporting for the presidency. I think she beat Barack Obama by something like 10 points, largely by connecting with white working class voters. Have you seen Barack Obama improve in that group of voters in the state of Pennsylvania?
Oh, no question. And it really started, that improvement started when the economy started to melt down. His performance in the debates, the way he handled the economic pressures, what he said, and the calm way he reacted, and the leadership that he exerted, I think really turned a lot of voters around. And I think he's going to hold his own with a lot of those white working class blue-collar voters in Pennsylvania, and that's going to be a difference. But it's an overwhelming vote in the suburbs, where, ironically, just a few short elections ago, Republicans routinely carried. I think that Barack Obama will carry the 4 Philadelphia suburbs by over 200,000 votes, carry Philadelphia by well over 400,000 votes, and that's the ball game.
And what I've read, Governor Rendell, is that Governor Palin was actually a drag on the ticket, particularly in those Philadelphia suburbs among moderate Republicans. What can you tell us about that?
I think that's absolutely correct. For every member of the base that she reignited and re-enthused, she lost to Republican moderate, and particularly Republican moderate women, ironically, in the suburbs. They just started falling off left and right. And I think that has as much to do with it as Senator Obama's appeal. And Senator Obama has great appeal in the Philadelphia suburbs. He basically broke even in the Philadelphia suburbs with Senator Clinton. So he's got some appeal in his own right. But I think Governor Palin hurt significantly in the Philadelphia suburbs.
And finally, Governor Rendell, any reason to believe Obama will not win the state of Pennsylvania tonight?
Oh, gosh. Everything I know about this state running for 31 years tells me there's no way he can overcome what's going to happen in the Philadelphia region. No way.
And when you were asked if you'd like to be part, if he wins, of an Obama administration, you said, why the heck would I want to work for that guy? I've got the best job in the world. Do you still feel that way?
Well, I've been my own boss for 31 years, Katie, and as you know, the 1 year that I worked for somebody, I was pretty lousy at it, so I don't think Senator Obama should even consider me.
All right, Governor Ed Rendell, thanks so much for making time for us tonight, Governor. Appreciate it so much.
Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Barack Obama is hanging on to a 2-to-1 lead in the early electoral vote count, but a lot of key swing states, we're just waiting and waiting, but they're still swinging in the wind at this hour, including Pennsylvania, Florida, and Virginia. And we'll be right back.
CBS News Election Night coverage is sponsored by ExxonMobil, taking on the world's toughest energy challenges.
And welcome back to CBS News election headquarters here in New York. And we have 2 important Senate seats to tell you about right now. In North Carolina, Senator Elizabeth Dole has been defeated. This is a turnover, as you can see by those arrows, by Kay Hagan. It's a major upset in the Tar Heel state. Republican icon Senator Elizabeth Dole, the wife of former GOP nominee Bob Dole and a former cabinet secretary for Reagan Bush. Hagan portrayed Dole as out of touch with North Carolina. She said she'd only been in the state 13 times in 2006. That she voted with President Bush 92% of the time and was the 93rd most effective senator in the U.S. Senate. So obviously that was a key combination. We have another call as well in the Senate. We can tell you that former Governor Jeanne Shaheen, now this is a rematch, by the way, from 2002, but she is the projected winner over Senator John Sununu, who came in 2002, but payback is tough for Senator Sununu tonight. He is the son of former Governor John Sununu, who was also President Bush Sr.'s chief of staff. So two very significant Democratic wins, Democratic turnovers in the U.S. Senate, building their way toward that filibuster-proof 60-seat majority. Right, Byron?
That's right, Katie. We're talking about history tonight. With Elizabeth losing, come January, this will be the first time in 50 years there's not been a Dole or a Bush in elected office in this country. That's huge. Remember, we're talking about Jesse Helms' old seat in North Carolina, and this is an indication about the trouble that the Republicans may face across the country. One of the things that may have done in Elizabeth Dole, we talked about it, was a TV ad. She ran an ad near the end of the campaign where she attacked her opponent, not about the economy, not about the war in Iraq, but about who she hangs out with, making the suggestion that she hangs out with people who are anti-God. Take a look.
That. In God we trust, you're going to whip that off the money?
Yeah, we would. Godless Americans and Kay Hagan. She hid from cameras, took godless money. What did Hagan promise in return?
There is no God.
Katie, there was a backlash to that ad all across North Carolina.
We should mention there is no God. That wasn't Kay Hagan speaking, by the way.
That's right. I mean, she came out the very next day with a hard TV ad. She filed a lawsuit against Senator Dole. She came with a TV ad making the point that she's a Sunday school teacher, that she's a Presbyterian. And last time I checked, Presbyterians love Jesus as much as any other Christian. And again, talking to friends in eastern North Carolina, that was a problem. So, Katie, if we can look at our filibuster scorecard and why this moment is so important for the Democrats. So at this point, the Democrats have now picked up 3 seats. They're hoping to gain 9 tonight. They've picked up 3 in Virginia, North Carolina, and New Hampshire. As you said, Katie, New Hampshire was a rematch from 2002. Everything that worked for John Sununu in 2002 worked against him in 2008.
All right, Byron Pitts. Thanks, Byron. We're going to look at a lot of undecided states. Why are there so many white states on our national map? We'll take a look at that in a moment. And welcome back, everyone, on this very exciting election night 2008. But we haven't been able to tell you a lot of projections so far. In fact, if you look at my touchscreen map here on my desk, we have John McCain with 39 electoral votes, Barack Obama with 81. The magic number, we should repeat, is 270 needed to clinch the presidency. But as you can see on this map, there are a number of undecided states. In Indiana's case, it's too close to call. Let's take a look. We have Indiana, too close to call. Ohio, the Buckeye state, undecided at this hour. North Carolina, which is increasingly competitive this year, the Old Dominion, undecided at this point. And Pennsylvania, where John McCain has pinned his hopes on this state to help him on his path to victory. That is undecided. We just heard Governor Ed Rendell of Pennsylvania express a lot of confidence. Meanwhile, let's go to our Director of Surveys, Kathy Frankovic, because, Kathy, I think a lot of people might be wondering when we project winners in certain states and why so many are undecided at this hour. In the case of Indiana, Kathy, too close to call.
Yes, and we've said that Indiana is, in fact, a very close state. What we do is we use exit polls information, but, you know, an exit poll is only a survey, so we often wait for actual sample precincts to come to us and see if the exit poll information is validated, or if perhaps there may be some operational problem at the polling place. Pennsylvania has no votes counted, no actual votes counted, but we are starting to get overlays from sample precincts, and we're working on it. We're also working on Ohio, and we're working on North Carolina very intently.
And you can't really rely on exit polling because that's sometimes misleading, right, Kathy?
Well, it could be. It depends on how good the interviewers are and whether there are problems at the polling places. So we look at votes, too.
All right. Kathy Frankovic, you're a very busy woman tonight. Thanks so much. It's a slow and careful counting of the votes, as Kathy just mentioned, on this historic election night. We're still waiting to see which way some key states will swing, including Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. Polls close in Arkansas in just a few minutes. You're watching Election Night here on CBS. And welcome back this election night. The headline of the moment. CBS News now projects Barack Obama will win the battleground state of Pennsylvania. That is a major blow to John McCain, who desperately needed a win there. And just moments ago, polls closed in Arkansas. John McCain, we estimate, will win there on this election night, 2008.
CBS News election night coverage continues. Here again is Katie Couric.
And welcome back, everyone. As we just mentioned, a key victory for Barack Obama in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania. Let's go to Chip Reed. Of course, this is a big disappointment for John McCain. Chip, we've been talking all night about the fact that John McCain and Sarah Palin spent so much time in Pennsylvania, spent a lot of money in that state as well. This has to be a big disappointment.
Absolutely. They've made clear all along that if they lose Pennsylvania, it is very difficult to put together a path to victory here, a way for them to get the 270 electoral votes. I have yet to talk to any of them, but I'm sure they would say we still think there's a way to get there, but it's really hard to envision. They have spent so much time there. I know all of us in the press corps practically knew the small towns around the Philadelphia area, not in Philly. They didn't spend much time there, but the small towns 15, 20, 30, 40 miles from Philadelphia, they spent a tremendous amount of time there. And Moon Township, north of Pittsburgh, these areas outside in kind of the exurbs of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and also in the Harrisburg area, Lancaster also. A lot of the small towns, they just went there over and over and over. McCain a lot, and Palin practically lived there. So really, they had put a lot of eggs in that Pennsylvania basket, and it didn't work, Katie, so it's got to be a tremendous disappointment.
And they were working very hard to sort of rekindle their campaign with white working class voters, and they were drawing some pretty big crowds there.
Oh, they were. They were getting some big crowds and some very enthusiastic crowds. And one thing they really went at very scientifically in Pennsylvania was to try to identify exactly where the white working class Democrats are who voted for Hillary Clinton, and then to target them, to go to those areas and really aggressively pursue them, both in advertising and with door knocks and telephone calls and flyers and with visits from John McCain and Sarah Palin. And it appeared that they did succeed to some degree, but obviously not enough.
Yeah, let's see what Chip Reed, Chip, thank you so much. Let's take a look at what some of the exit polls coming out of Pennsylvania are saying. Anthony, you have some information for us on that?
Yeah, Katie, we're going to take a look at the coalition that Barack Obama has put together to win Pennsylvania. And it's very interesting because it's essentially a group of men, white women, independents, and black voters. And what's particularly significant here is while John Kerry won Pennsylvania narrowly 4 years ago, he lost men and he lost white women. In fact, he only got 45% of white women 4 years ago. But look here, Barack Obama has 58% of them. Men, 55%. He's taken 59% of independents and 95% of black voters. That's an improvement on John Kerry's 84% 4 years ago. Chip Reed was referring to the Hillary Clinton voters that John McCain went after. Let's see what happened to them. In fact, we have the numbers here. A lot of working class voters here that look like they could be ripe for the picking. But Barack Obama has taken 81% of Hillary Clinton supporters in Pennsylvania. What's more, he's done even better among female Hillary Clinton supporters, taking 83% of them. So McCain's inroads, very modest. And this is the coalition that Obama's put together and the reason he's won Pennsylvania, Katie.
All right, Anthony Mason, thanks. And apparently, Bob and Jeff, he did very well, Barack Obama did, in northeastern Pennsylvania and western Pennsylvania, those towns like Scranton and those places where a lot of working class, white working class voters reside. So the John McCain strategy was clearly not successful there.
In this case, the preliminary exit poll data that we presented a few minutes ago was dead on, because this is what Anthony's talking about. Those white working class voters in and around Scranton, Pennsylvania, went for Obama. No surprise that he did great in Philadelphia, but these affluent suburbs, Governor Rendell told you that a few minutes ago, it's a pretty clear-cut victory. And as we've been talking about, when you look at the national map now, with Pennsylvania in Obama's pocket, if he were to win Colorado and New Mexico and hold the rest of the Kerry states, if Barack Obama just does only that, if he wins none of the battleground states you talked about, that's enough to win.
So it's a very challenging road for John McCain.
Oh, it's going to be very difficult from here on in. But let's just go back to Pennsylvania a little bit here. I mean, the fact that he got those white working class voters, that was always the question. Could he get those voters that were voting for Hillary Clinton? And he showed he did. And, you know, we've talked a lot about how much effort that John McCain put into Pennsylvania. Well, let me tell you something. Barack Obama put a lot of effort in there. I think one of the most astounding statistics that I have heard of over the weekend, Obama's volunteers knocked on 1.8 million doors in Pennsylvania. I mean, I've never heard of a number like that. And they also overwhelmed them once again with television ads. McCain put about $20 million worth of television ads in there, but I think Obama spent about $30-something million worth of ads. They really pulled all the stops there. They knew that McCain was going after Pennsylvania, and boy, they made sure that he didn't get it.
Now, before we go to Cynthia Bowers, who's with a huge crowd of people in Grant Park in Chicago, we should mention that you were there during a very different time, back in 1968.
You know, we're talking about the different historical milestones that we're seeing tonight. This is Grant Park. This is where those awful riots took place during the 1968 convention, Katie. It was my first political convention. I've never seen another one quite like it. The rioting went on for a week there. And now we're told that before this is over tonight, there may be as many as 1 million people gathered in Grant Park to hear Barack Obama speak.
It was also a time when white working class Democrats began to defect, even before Reagan, to Richard Nixon. The racial tensions between white working class Democrats, not only in the South but in the Northeast. Tonight the Democratic Party looks very different, and so does Grant Park.
And in fact, let's go to Cynthia Bowers, who's in the middle of it all. Cynthia?
Katie, this crowd is crazy excited, and I say that because every time a state goes for Obama, they go crazy. And a note to Bob, this city has been trying very hard to set a new image for Grant Park, and they're determined that this be the night. As you said, there are 70,000 inside where I'm standing, maybe 1 million outside. The mayor's invited the whole city, so you never know. But you know those cute little girls, Sasha and Malia? I've got 2 cuter kids, maybe, that are Obama fans. This is Joshua Pendleton. He's 5 months old, and his mom, Franchetta. And then Sedgwick Willis and his little boy, Sedgwick Willis Jr., 4 and 5 months old. They came here. Why did you want your son to be here tonight?
So that he can make history.
And what did you do to get invited to this shindig?
I volunteered with Citizens for the Better West Side.
And why did you think this was so important, Franchetta?
Because this is the first African-American president.
And is this life-changing for you and your son, do you think?
Yes.
And I just have to introduce the beautiful grandmother of this little boy here, because her name is Paula Jones, and the first thing she said to me is, "Not that one." Is this a big night for you, Paula?
This is a historic night, and it's a lovely night, and I just got to say, to have this ticket is the most exciting thing I've done all this year, so big up to Big Obama. Love Obama.
Okay, and I think that's the feeling of everybody here. Every time they hear a state go for Obama, as I said, they go crazy. They're very excited. They're looking forward to, in a park named for a president, Ulysses Grant, hopefully seeing a president-elect later tonight. Katie?
All right, Cynthia Bowers, thank you so much. And of course, we should mention that the polls are still open in many states, so if you have not had a chance to vote, please do so, and then when you're done, come back home and watch us right here on CBS. We're going to want to go to Bill Whitaker now. He's at Ohio State University with Senator John Glenn. Hey, Bill.
Hello, Katie. I have with me here Senator John Glenn, former senator of Ohio, the first American to orbit the globe. Now, Senator, you're a man who knows about firsts. What do you think about this evening of potential firsts?
Well, I think it's great. You know, we're seeing, we all decry that after every election we talk about how nobody is interested and where our vote is going below 50%. So all at once this time around, there's so much interest, and particularly among the young people. Right here at the Ohio State University, for instance, we have all these students in there on an election night thing, whether they're Democrat, Republican, or whatever they are. I think this speaks very well for the future. One of the things we try and provide with the school here is we try and inspire citizenship and develop leadership. And a lot of these kids are going to be the leaders of the future here, and we're just proud to have Malin participating tonight.
Well, Senator, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Senator John Glenn at the John Glenn School of Public Affairs at Ohio State University here in Columbus. Back to you, Katie.
All right, Bill Whitaker, thank you so much, and please give Senator Glenn my best. We want to announce another projection. CBS News now projects the state of Alabama, the solidly red state, has gone solidly for John McCain tonight so he can add that to his column. He now has amassed 54 electoral votes to Barack Obama's 102. We've talked a lot about the Obama organization, which is really unparalleled in the history of American politics. And Dee Dee Myers, have you seen anything quite like the amount of money raised and the organization that the Obama campaign exhibited during the entire course of this campaign?
No, Katie, there's never been anything quite like it. When all is said and done, he will have raised more than $650 million, most of it in small donations averaging about $86, and he will have built an enormous field organization. And not only did he build this unprecedented organization, he did it using the internet. I think he's rewritten the book on how to run a presidential campaign. It will be the standard model for 4 years from now. Everybody will be studying that campaign to see how they did it. In part, it was driven by enormous enthusiasm for his candidacy. He appealed to people's hope and desire for change. And part of it was driven just by good nuts and bolts, day-to-day management of that campaign. Big hats off to the people who ran it, David Axelrod, Plouffe, and others. I think, again, that they've made history tonight.
All right, Dee Dee Myers, thanks. Let's take another quick look and get you up to speed on the national map because things are happening quickly and in some cases very slowly. Let's take a look. As you can see, the states in blue have gone to Senator Obama. He currently has 102 electoral votes. The states in red, most recently Alabama, have gone to Senator John McCain. And all those states are undecided. The states in white, including the state of Florida, the state of Georgia, which John McCain was expected to win handily. That may be much more competitive than we originally anticipated, as well as North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, and the bellwether state of Missouri. And we'll be back with much more on this election night 2008 right after this.
Where on earth could we ever find enough oil and natural gas to power more than 60 million cars and heat 160 million households for 60 years? Right here in America. Log on to learn more.
Welcome back to CBS News election headquarters here in New York City. You know, when John McCain tapped Governor Sarah Palin of Alaska, many people were very surprised at his choice. She was relatively unknown, but an extremely popular governor with an 80% approval rating in the state of Alaska. Anthony Mason has some exit polling information on the Palin effect and how it affected the way voters made their choice today. Anthony?
Yeah, Katie, it looks like in a couple of key categories, it did cost John McCain some votes. We want to look first at moderate Republicans. And 46% of moderate Republicans we talked to on our exit poll said the choice of Sarah Palin was an important factor in their vote today. So how did they vote? Well, 21% actually went for Barack Obama. That may not seem like a big number, but it's actually double the national percentage of Republicans who voted for Obama. So clearly here, John McCain lost some votes because of the Sarah Palin choice, but it's more pronounced when you go to independents. 42% of independents told us that the Palin was an important factor in their vote. Where did they go? They went very strongly for Barack Obama, 58 to 42%. So there's clear evidence here, Katie, that the governor of Alaska ended up costing John McCain some votes today.
All right, Dan Bartlett, I know you have some views on Sarah Palin and the Palin effect. Was it a mistake in your mind? I know that it energized the base of the party a lot, but it did, as we just saw, turn off a lot of voters as well.
Right, Katie. I think when this was first announced, I said this was either going to be an enormous success or an enormous failure. And I think the McCain campaign knew themselves that it was a risky choice, that they had to take a chance, that if they ran a typical Republican campaign and therefore picked a typical candidate as vice president, that wouldn't shake things up enough to re-scramble the race and to his advantage. And I think what you've seen is that, and maybe in some of these traditional states she's been where she's got strong support within the Republican Party, that's been fine. But if you go to a Pennsylvania, somewhere, a true battleground state, somewhere where you're trying to wrestle away from the Democrats, a blue state, maybe that's where the problems lie, because it's not only what she says and what she does, but it's also a presidential judgment The American people are looking at the president, the potential presidential candidate, making this big presidential decision, and some may have come to the conclusion that was more based on politics and not on governance.
So it might have been sort of one step forward for womankind, but it was sort of a couple of steps backwards, because it brought John McCain's age and health front and center once again, Dan, didn't it?
Well, some would make that argument, and I think to Palin's credit, though, or at least and put this in context, to ask anybody who's not been on the national stage and preparing for this job in a way in which you're out there conversing on all the issues is asking awful a lot. To go from 0 to 60 in one news cycle almost is an enormous challenge for anybody, much less somebody who, like I said, who is not in the slipstream of national media coverage and dealing with the twos and fros of a presidential campaign. So it was a risky choice, and we'll have to see how this data plays out in some of these key states to see if it was too risky of a choice.
And in many ways, he sort of lost the experience card, too, because Governor Palin had been governor of Alaska for only 18 months when she was tapped, and before that, the mayor of Wasilla, with population something like 6,000.
Well, there were a lot of people who were supporters of John McCain who were concerned that he was just getting traction over the summer on that very issue, the experience gap issue, and that by putting her on the ticket, it undermined that argument and that message. Again, these type of things will be debated in the days to come.
We should mention, Dan, thanks very much. McCain aide is recently quoted as saying, quote, "At this point, we need a miracle."
Well, I think at this point they do need a miracle. If I can just add on a little bit to what Dan Bartley was talking about, I think these surveys are going to show that she was indeed a drag on this ticket. I still think it was the economy that's going to make the difference in this campaign. But Katie, when she was picked, it seemed like a popular choice. She made a very good speech at the convention. It was a real big chance. But those interviews that you did with her, I mean, she made a terrible impression in those interviews. And I think that's when the bloom came off this rose right there. I mean, and I would say that even if you were not sitting here.
Well, thank you very much. Meanwhile, the vice president's choice doesn't usually matter. Do you think in this case it did?
Yes. She was Norma Ray for about 2 weeks, and then she was somebody else.
All right. And we'll be back with much more election coverage right after this. And welcome back to CBS News Election Headquarters. We're going to head to Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, where Russ Mitchell has a special guest in a moment. But first, we want to catch you up with the national map so you know what's going on right now in terms of the presidential election. As you can see, John McCain has 54 electoral votes. Barack Obama has 102. But states that are still undecided, in the case of Indiana, it's too close to call. But hanging out there, twisting in the wind at this point, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, and the state of Missouri, a key bellwether state. Let's now go to Atlanta, Georgia, and Russ Mitchell. Russ?
Hi, Katie. I'm sorry I can barely hear you. It turned into a rollicking election night watch party here at Ebenezer Baptist Church. More than 1,000 people are here right now. The night has been filled with songs, as you hear right now, sermons and cheers every time good news is announced for Barack Obama. Joining me right now is one of the pioneers of the civil rights movement, Ambassador Andrew Young. Ambassador Young, thank you so much for joining us. When Pennsylvania was called for Barack Obama a few moments ago, I saw tears in your eyes. What does this night mean for you?
God is still on the throne. It's a victory of faith over fear, grace over greed, and vision over violence. And I thank Barack Obama and his entire team for leading our country in that direction.
Looking back over the years, did you ever think that this day would come, that you would ever see it in your lifetime?
I think so, but I never thought of it in terms of a president. I thought America could really live up to the vision of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and James Madison. You know, Barack Obama is very much in that same age group, that same intellectual category.
Ambassador Andrew Young, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Katie, more from Ebenezer in just a bit. Now back to you.
All right, Russ, thanks so much, and we'll be back right after this. It is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, a very historic election day in America as we choose a new president, vice president, and Congress. Polls have just closed in 15 more states. Let's take a look at what CBS News can project. We have some projections that we can tell you about. Right now, John McCain has 100 electoral votes, Barack Obama 174. Just 100 shy, less than 100 shy for the Electoral College number of 270. In the state of Texas, President Bush voted for John McCain. So did his home state of Texas, CBS News projects. And reliably Democratic New York pushes the button for Barack Obama tonight. Meanwhile, Michigan, it was once considered John McCain's best shot to win a blue state, but the Republicans pulled their advertising several weeks ago. No surprise, Barack Obama takes it. And in Minnesota, that was, of course, the site of the 2008 GOP convention. Despite that, CBS News estimates it's the site of another victory for Barack Obama. In Wisconsin, it was very competitive, but recent economic news swung the state to Obama. He's the projected winner there. And in Kansas, Obama often trumpets his Kansas roots, but this ruby red state decided there was no place like home in the Republican Party. Rhode Island, it may be the smallest state, but it goes big for Barack Obama tonight. And in North Dakota, now 63% of the vote went to George Bush last time in 2004, but CBS News projects the winner there is Senator John McCain. And in Dick Cheney's home state of Wyoming, where he endorsed the McCain-Palin ticket just last Saturday, delivers a victory to Senator John McCain. So as you see on our national map, John McCain with 100 electoral votes, Barack Obama closing in on that 270 magic number, 174 for him so far tonight. We are now joined by a senior McCain strategist, Nicole Wallace. Nicole, are you there? Nice to talk to you, Nicole. I know a senior campaign aide for the McCain campaign told CBS News just moments ago, quote, "We're going to need a miracle." What's your reaction?
Well, I tell you that you learn two things when you work for John McCain. One is never give up, and the other is it ain't over till it's over. So my family lives in Nevada, and they were just heading to the polls a few minutes ago when I came down here to the ballroom. So there are still people heading to the polls to cast their vote, and I think out of respect for their right to do that, we've got to wait and see how this night shapes up. But look, we knew it would be difficult. The map certainly is shaping up in a way we'd hoped to do better in Pennsylvania. But, you know, we always knew this would be a difficult night. But when you work for John McCain, you learn the important lesson that it isn't over till it's over.
As we've been saying all night, Nicole, John McCain and Sarah Palin spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania during the last week. How disappointing is it that they really didn't seem to connect there as well as they were hoping to, even among white working class voters?
Well, look, I traveled with John McCain, and when you're on the ground, you feel the crowds grow, and that was certainly the case in Pennsylvania. When we first started campaigning there, we had 1,000 people. By the end, we had 6,000, 7,000 people at our events. But, you know, we came up short. This is a tough election. It was a tough year for Republicans. We're still hopeful that that miracle that you described can happen, and, you know, it certainly happened before for John McCain.
And what would be the path to victory as you see it now, Nicole, in terms of some of the states that are still undecided and where the polls haven't closed yet, which is important to mention?
Well, look, I've stared at those maps before with you, Katie, and, you know, we need everything to go our way. You know, we need you to click that white Virginia. It all needs to turn red. Virginia, Ohio, Florida, and we need to do great in the Southwest, and it's not impossible. And, you know, John McCain promised a new direction for this country, and we hope that people that have yet to cast their votes out in the Southwest and the West will keep that in mind. And, you know, this has been a hard-fought election on both sides. These are two decent men running for president, and we hope that, you know, we'll have the support out there to come out on top tonight.
And finally, Nicole, you know, we've spent a few minutes talking just a bit ago about the selection of Governor Sarah Palin as John McCain's running mate. I know you've been very involved traveling with her during a good part of this campaign. According to our exit polls, 61% of women said Palin was not qualified to be president if necessary. I know when she was tapped, you told me that you were really hoping that she would attract Hillary Clinton's supporters who maybe didn't agree necessarily with Hillary Clinton's ideology completely, but who were enthused by her candidacy. Are you disappointed about the selection of Sarah Palin and the fact that she's turned off some moderate and independent voters as well?
Oh gosh, not at all. Listen, I think John McCain made an inspired selection when he picked Sarah Palin to be his running mate. I think it reinforced his commitment to turning Washington upside down and shaking it up. And, you know, if anything, if we failed to get that message across, that certainly isn't Sarah Palin's fault. She was an extraordinary candidate. You know, whatever happens tonight, I promise you, America hasn't seen the last of either John McCain or Sarah Palin. And I'm still hopeful that they will be the president and vice president-elect when we wake up tomorrow morning.
All right, Nicole Wallace, thanks so much. We want to catch you up on what's happening in some Senate races, if we could. Do we have some calls now that we can tell our viewers about? Well, we've got Senator Pat Roberts. He wins re-election in the Ruby Red, as I mentioned. I like those Wizard of Oz comparisons. State of Kansas beating his opponent, Jim Slattery. In Michigan, longtime Senator Carl Levin wins re-election in there. He's very popular in that state. In Nebraska, Mike Johans, Republican from the state of Nebraska, is elected to the U.S. Senate. And in Nevada, Tom Udall. Now, this is a turnover. No, New Mexico, Tom Udall. This is a turnover. This is the nephew of Mo Udall, who's a former congressman of Arizona and presidential candidate. It's hard to keep them straight because there's a Mark Udall running as well. We'll tell you about him later. Senator Jack Reed, who accompanied Barack Obama to Iraq, he wins re-election in the state of Rhode Island. And in South Dakota, Senator Tim Johnson, who had a stroke in 2006, it was unclear if he'd be well enough to run. He did, and he has been re-elected. In Texas, Senator John Cornyn wins re-election there in that very Republican state. And in Wyoming, Senator Mike Enzi. In the state of Wyoming, Senator John Barrasso beats his opponent, Nick Carter, wins re-election there. And as we went into the night, as we've told you, the current composition of the U.S. Senate, 51 Democrats, 49 Republicans, 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats. So far, the Democrats have gained 4 seats. So far tonight, the composition looks like this: 55 Democrats, 45 Republicans. They're shooting for a 60-seat majority, which would be filibuster-proof. Byron, catch us up with some of these Senate races in terms of their goals.
Well, Katie, remember, the Democrats need to make a net gain of 9 Senate seats in order to get to the filibuster-proof majority. Right now, they're on track for that to happen. Let's look at our filibuster scorecard, if you will. So far, the Democrats have won in Virginia. That's Mark Warner, a seat they expected to win. In North Carolina, Kay Hagan, that was a state they were hoping to win. New Hampshire, Jeanne Shaheen, a state they expected to win. As you mentioned, Tom Udall, one of the Udall cousins in New Mexico, he won. So, Katie, right now, the Democrats are moving in the direction they want to go in. They need 5 more states to pick up, and it's possible.
Let's talk about 2 very competitive races that we haven't really had much time, Byron, to chat about yet tonight. That is in the state of Georgia, where incumbent Senator Saxby Chambliss is running against State Rep Jim Martin. Saxby Chambliss came in on 2002, riding President Bush's coattails in a way because he was extremely popular.
Absolutely.
And he ran quite a negative campaign against Max Cleland, who is a Vietnam vet, and he lost 3 limbs in Vietnam. And Saxby Chambliss said Max Cleland wasn't strong enough on national security, and that really rankled a lot of Democrats.
Oh, it did. Even some Republicans thought he went too far with that criticism. The fact that Saxby Chambliss is in a tight race tonight, again, that speaks to the problem that the Republicans have tonight. Again, Georgia is a reliably red state. Katie, talking about what's happening out west, we can look at some exit polling of Hispanic voters out west. In New Mexico, in 2002, Hispanics made up 32% of the vote. Look at it tonight. It's up to 40%. Katie, I think that's one of the headlines out of tonight about the growing influence of Hispanic voters across the country.
All right, Byron Pitts. Byron, thanks very much. We want to go back to Cynthia Bowers, who's in a sea of people in Chicago tonight. Cynthia, tell us about the mood of that crowd, which must be pretty jubilant at this point.
Yeah, the crowd is going pretty crazy, Katie. And you can see around me, people are still filing in here. There's only 70,000 allowed into this place, so the crowds have to be backing up way outside into the city. Police were told no taking time off during this period. You're working a 12-hour shift. Everyone's on duty to make sure things go smoothly. I've got a woman here who has an interesting story to tell. Her name is Rosa. You have a son who's serving in Iraq.
Yes, I do.
And how do you feel about Obama, and why are you here to support him?
Well, I feel that he's been telling us that he's going to bring our troops back, and that's what I wish, and any other mother would wish the same for our troops to come home. Not only my son, but everyone else that has a son, daughter, grandson out there. He's promising to bring him back, and that's what I wish. I wish the war would end, and that's
How exciting is this night for you?
very exciting, very exciting. I'm hoping that everything goes well tonight, and hoping that our troops will be home.
And I bet you wish your son were home with you. We'll keep him in our prayers, okay? Thank you. Just a snippet of some of the people here. Katie, I also talked to a gentleman. If we have 1 second, I can bring him in. This is Clifton. Clifton is a machinist here in Chicago, born and bred here, and he says as an African-American man, it's great to be here tonight, right?
Absolutely. It's really exciting.
Okay, well, great. I hope you have a great time. Back to you, Katie.
All right, Cynthia Bowers, thank you so much in Chicago for us tonight. Let's go to David Axelrod now. He's the chief strategist for the Obama campaign. Nice to see you, David Axelrod.
Hey, Katie. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Obviously, Pennsylvania was a very important state for John McCain. He wanted to flip it into the Republican column. Why do you think he wasn't successful in the state of Pennsylvania?
Well, I think Pennsylvania has felt the lash of these economic policies that we've seen for the last 8 years in a really serious way. I think people understood that incomes were dropping, jobs were being lost, they were headed in the wrong direction, and they didn't see much of a change in the McCain policies. And Barack Obama has a different approach, wants to rebuild this economy from the middle class up, small businesses up, a whole different orientation, and I think people are ready for that. This is an electorate, I think, that is poised for change. People waited on lines for hours and hours and hours today to vote for it, and I think we're headed in that direction. We've got to count a few more votes, but clearly Pennsylvania was a very important state, and we're pleased that it's in our column.
I know Virginia is also a state you've been focused on, and I know Senator Obama was up by double digits, but now it seems like it is extremely close. We haven't been able to project a winner there, and Jeff Greenfield has been monitoring it on his map. Is it much tighter than you anticipated?
No, we always anticipated a tight race in Virginia. After all, they haven't voted for a Republican candidate for president since 1964.
You mean a Democratic candidate?
A Democratic candidate, I'm sorry, since '64, and the same was true in Indiana, where we're fighting hard tonight. So we knew it would be a battle, but we also are encouraged by what we see in the vote patterns in the state. We're overperforming where Democratic candidates have been before, and we think we're going to do very well in the areas of strength there in northern Virginia. We're also excited about North Carolina. We like what we see there. I mentioned Indiana, Florida, Ohio. I mean, these are all states that were in the Republican column 4 years ago that we think that we're fighting for, fighting hard tonight. New Mexico is in our column. We're waiting to hear from Colorado and Iowa. All of these states were in the Republican column 4 years ago, so this gives us great encouragement. But we want to see some more hard votes before we can really sort this out.
Real quickly, anything you're worried about? You're feeling pretty good about most everything so far tonight.
No, I'm not worried. I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by the results. I'm invigorated by the crowd out there in Grant Park, and we're eager to see them. But we just, if we could just spin the clock a little and get to the end, we'd love to. But we've waited 2 years. We can wait a few hours more.
All right, David Axelrod, chief strategist for the Obama campaign. Thanks so much for talking to us tonight.
Thanks, Katie. Good to be with you.
And fewer than 100 electoral votes now stand between Barack Obama and the presidency. John McCain still hoping for help from those swing states that are still swinging in the wind at this hour. And we'll be right back. And And welcome back to CBS News on this election night. If John McCain has Georgia on his mind, apparently Georgians have John McCain on their mind. CBS News projects that he is the winner of the 15 electoral votes in the heart of the Republican South, even though high voter turnout among African Americans was thought to make it more competitive. In fact, this year they were 30% of the electorate, the African American vote in Georgia, up from 25% in 2004, but it was not enough to make Barack Obama the winner in the state of Georgia. There are a number of undecided states, as we've mentioned. Let's take a look at the national map. All the white states on this map are currently undecided. We have a slew of very important battleground states and swing states. Jeff Greenfield, let's talk about these states and why they're so competitive. You have Virginia on your screen.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, good news for John McCain, because in the week before the election, Barack Obama had opened up a lead in the polls. Right now, this race is incredibly close. More than 2 million votes have been cast, 67% of the precincts in, and about 20,000 votes separate them. Why? Well, Barack Obama's doing what he should be doing in the North. We mentioned Loudoun County earlier, just across from the Potomac. Bush won that 4 years ago. Barack Obama's winning it now. The problem for Barack Obama is in these rural areas, down on the South, John McCain is actually, if these numbers are right or these colors are right, he's outperforming Bush. He's getting a lot of votes from rural and small-town Virginia, and this battle is going on all over the state. This, by the way, is Richmond City, not the city of Richmond, a heavily African-American population where turnout has been up. But the problem is, for Obama, if people were hoping for a kind of a quick decision, John McCain's strength in the West and the South, despite Ralph Stanley, the bluegrass legend, is holding up. We can look to Indiana, to the west, and show you also, as those votes are coming in, that that state is a battleground. This is better news for Obama because, as we've talked about, this is such a ruby red, it's not Kansas, Katie, but it's a ruby red state. And here, unsurprisingly, in the north, in Gary, that's Lake County, and where Notre Dame is, Barack Obama's doing well. He's doing very well in Indianapolis. But all through, for instance, the Northeast and down here in the Southeast, this is classic conservative country, and John McCain is doing very well. We may be looking at that state of Indiana for hours to come, because a loss for McCain in Virginia or Indiana or North Carolina or Florida, boy, that comes close to sealing the deal.
So he doesn't have any room for error, really.
There's no room for error, and that's the thing. And what we're seeing so far is everything seems to be going the way we thought it was going in all of these carry states. That
no big surprises.
No big surprises. Obama had big leads in all of them except Pennsylvania. Well, he had a big lead. We now know he won Pennsylvania. It's still going to be very, very hard for John McCain. If he can win Virginia, that would help a lot.
Right.
But he hasn't won it yet. And out there in Indiana, what, 135,000 jobs lost in Indiana? That's going to be tough, but he still has a chance.
Anthony Mason, by the way, has some interesting national exit poll data that we're going to get to. But first, we're going to take this commercial break. We're back, and you're looking at pictures at Grant Park, where close to 1 million people are expected to gather and listen to Barack Obama when he comes out later tonight. They're about to get good news, and they've been cheering when they hear that good news, because we can now tell you that CBS News can project Barack Obama has won the state of Ohio, one of those red states that he was targeting. No Republican has ever won the presidency without winning Ohio. This is a devastating loss for John McCain, a very hard-fought battle. And it looks like Barack Obama has a significant lead in the numbers at this point in time. This is a big loss for John
I don't
McCain.
see how John McCain can win now. I mean, I guess it's still possible mathematically, but I mean, when you look at the map, winning Ohio, I think Barack Obama is going to be the president of the United States. And I mean, that's just the shortest way I can put it, but I think that's where we're headed.
The cake is baked in your view.
Yep.
The deal is sealed. But before we get to these issues, let me show you why Bob, I think, is so right. There's been no competition on the West Coast for the 4 states of California, Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii, Barack Obama's birth state. If he wins nothing else but those states, that puts him over the top. And we're looking at Florida, we're looking at North Carolina, we're looking at Virginia, very close. But with this win, we're not even talking now about Iowa or Colorado or New Mexico. All those scenarios, with the loss of Ohio for John McCain, this is pretty much it.
All right. Obama, by the way, wins white working class voters in Ohio, which was the key to his success. And we want to, before we go to a commercial break, mention that John McCain has a bit of good news. Barack Obama didn't really even campaign in the state of Louisiana, but John McCain is the projected winner there tonight. The magic number for winning the presidency is 270 electoral votes. Barack Obama is closing in on 200 to John McCain's 124, but is not over yet. There are still some big battleground states up for grabs. We'll be right back. And welcome back to CBS News Election Night here in New York City. Some key swing states swing behind Obama, including Ohio and Pennsylvania, but we're still waiting on Florida, Indiana, North Carolina, and Colorado. Senator Obama now has 194 electoral votes on the road to 270 and the presidency. John McCain, meanwhile, is running out of ways to win. In the Senate, the Democrats pick up 4 seats. They need 5 more for that filibuster-proof supermajority. It is election night in America.
CBS News election night coverage continues. Here again is Katie Couric.
And we have 2 Senate seats to tell you about right now. In Kentucky, as we mentioned earlier, Mitch McConnell was in a surprisingly competitive race with millionaire businessman Bruce Lunsford. Mitch McConnell, a very important and powerful Republican on Capitol Hill, but he is the projected winner. He wins re-election in Kentucky. Tonight, he was first elected to the Senate in 1984. We can also tell you in the state of Mississippi, Senator Thad Cochran easily wins his 6th term in Mississippi. So Democratic wishes for a 60 filibuster-proof majority, 2 times dash so far tonight. Meanwhile, we're going to go to Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania. He joins us now. Senator Casey, good to see you.
Katie, good to be with you.
I understand that you and Senator Obama played basketball today. Tell us how he was feeling about tonight's results, and was he feeling optimistic?
Well, Katie, he was in a good mood, a very serious mood because of the enormity of what's happening today and tonight. But he was very much focused on winning the games we were playing. His team won a few, my team was 0 for 3, so he had a good night, and we hope that continues for the rest of the night.
Okay, if you can just stand by, Senator, for a second, because we do have a call. We can now tell you the projected winner in New Mexico, Senator Barack Obama. Help, because this has the highest percentage of Hispanics than any state in the country. An important win, a targeted win for the Obama campaign, a formerly red state, part of their Western strategy, along with Nevada and Colorado. Right now, we can tell you that New Mexico goes into the Obama column with 5 electoral votes. So looking at the tallies right now, you can see John McCain with 124, Barack Obama closing in ever closer to 200, 270 necessary to clinch this election. Going back to Senator Casey, do you think this is over, Senator? Is there anything that concerns you as you watch the polls close in some of these Western states?
Well, Katie, I'm not sure about the national numbers, but I was very much encouraged by what we saw in Pennsylvania, where you're seeing a very broad win across the state, across voter groups that a lot of Democrats don't have success with. So I think it's a testament to Senator Obama's message of change, but also I think his character. This is a man of tremendous faith and strength of character, the kind of leader we're going to need to help guide us through this very difficult economic time in our history.
Are you surprised that he did so well in Pennsylvania, given the fact that Hillary Clinton beat him by 10 points during the primary?
Well, I always thought he could win the state, but you have to understand, in 65 years, only Lyndon Johnson and Franklin Roosevelt have gotten more than 51% of the vote. So if he goes above that, which looks like he'll go way above that, that's an unprecedented win. And I think it bodes well for his ability to govern as President of the United States, to be able to bring people together. I think in many ways he's a transcendent figure in our history, and he can bring people together to solve a lot of tough economic problems that many of our families face.
Let me ask you a more microcosmic question, if I could, Senator, and it's about Joe Lieberman. As you know, he's been really all over John McCain out on the campaign trail. They are thick as thieves. He's a really good friend of John McCain's. He spoke at the Republican National Convention. He's an independent. He caucuses with the Democrats. Will he remain in the Democratic caucus, given the fact that you all have increased your majority so far?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, Katie. That'll be determined in the weeks ahead. But I think that one thing we've got to do, and I think what Senator Obama has done very well in the tough crucible of a campaign, is to try to bring people together, to try as best he could as a candidate to appeal to the better angels of our nature, and I think that's the kind of president we need.
All right, Senator Bob Casey, as we're watching pictures of a huge crowd at Grant Park, very excited, I think, every time they see another state. And there you have Ebenezer Baptist Church watching the returns there, probably just getting the news that New Mexico has gone into the Obama column as well. A lot of jubilation, a very important night we can't overemphasize at all for African Americans and for this country in terms of what a historic moment this is.
Can I just tell you a quick story? 1963 March on Washington. We go through an inner city street on the way to the march. There is an old African American on the stoop weeping for joy. And all he's saying over and over again is, all my life I've been waiting to see this day come to pass. All my life. He was talking about a march of white and blacks for the right to vote. I had to tell you, I was thinking about, as Ohio went into Obama's column, he's probably not around today, but what he and folks like him might be thinking today, you can't ignore that this is an astonishing moment in American history.
And winning New Mexico is huge. I mean, I think now it is just virtually impossible for John McCain. I just don't think you can find the numbers on this map, can find a way for John McCain to win. Now, I preface all this by saying, yes, the polls are still open on the West Coast. There are still, but please go vote, folks. If you haven't voted yet, there are other offices to be decided. But I can't figure out a way that John McCain can win now. I just can't figure that out.
All right, let's go to Anthony Mason, who has some interesting exit polling results, because obviously Barack Obama registered more African Americans, increased turnout in many states, but he had to convince white Americans that he could lead this country. And you have some interesting exit poll data on that, Anthony.
Yeah, Katie, actually, we want to look at why Obama won Ohio, and it goes to a lot of those things you were talking about and more, in fact. I mean, this is a state that Bush won in both the last two elections, but this is a state now with a 7% unemployment rate and with the 7th highest foreclosure rate. So you look at the breakdown of what Obama won, he took young voters by a margin of almost 2-to-1. He took women with 54%. And 4 years ago, this vote split between Kerry and Bush. Economy was the biggest issue here, as I mentioned, and Barack Obama took 55% of those who said the economy was their top concern. What's more, he won the white working class with 50% to 47%. A lot of people thought he couldn't draw men, but let's take a look and see how men went. And we'll see that 4 years ago in Ohio, Bush actually took males 52 to 47%, but Obama literally flipped that on its head. He won 52 to 46. He lost among white voters, but he still did very well, taking 46% of white men. So you see, he built a coalition in Ohio, Katie, that went across the board. He won the African-American vote, but it was much more than that.
All right, Anthony Mason, thank you. Barack Obama is 71 electoral votes away from the presidency, but John McCain mathematically is not out of it yet as we await results from some key battleground states. We'll be right back.
$43 back then, my
And welcome back to CBS News. You're looking at shots at the Biltmore Hotel in Phoenix, Arizona, the site of the McCain gathering tonight. And if pictures paint 1,000 words, you can contrast that with the site of Grant Park in Chicago, Illinois, where close to 1 million people are expected tonight. A very different atmosphere, we might add, although they looked like they were having fun at the Biltmore a little bit. I'm not sure who was singing, but who was that?
Hank Williams.
That was Hank Williams Jr. I'm sorry, I should have recognized old Hank.
Some very pungent lyrics about Barack Obama in some of his recent songs.
Yeah, in fact, he made a statement last night in Colorado Springs that Barack Obama didn't like the national anthem, which was a pretty incendiary thing to say one day before the election, but apparently the crowd that was gathered liked it. Let's go now to Peggy Noonan, who is a columnist with the Wall Street Journal, to talk about the results so far. And Peggy, if it's okay with you, we're going to take a quick look at the national map before we talk, just to catch people up. It is 9:42 Eastern time, and if you look at the national map, you see that John McCain right now has 124 electoral votes to Barack Obama's 199. But we should mention that Barack Obama has won 2 critical states so far tonight, Pennsylvania and Ohio. Very hard-fought contests in both of those states, but there's some critical battleground states that are still undecided. Indiana has been too close to call for almost the entire night. And then we have the states of Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, and Missouri, and we're waiting for results from some western states as well. Peggy, it looks like a very tough night for John McCain. You've written extensively about this campaign. What do you think was John McCain's biggest mistake? Was it simply being a Republican in a very toxic environment?
Oh my goodness, it is a toxic environment this year. I think you can see from the exit polls the extraordinary number of people who think America's on the wrong track. The high number of people who called themselves either disappointed with or disapproving of the Bush administration. I do think the American people have been in a firing mood. At the same time, I think that very firing mood has allowed people to take a look at the lay of the land and think, I want to do something new. I want to hire someone new. I want to throw open the traces. I am not sure John McCain could have won. I'm not sure a Republican could have won in a difficult time like this. 2 wars, a major economic recession, an effectively disappearing president who not has literally disappeared, but because of his unpopularity, he has not been able to lead us through this difficult time. It was a bad, bad time to be a Republican, whatever mistakes the McCain campaign made.
And Peggy, let me ask Bob Herbert, of course, columnist for the New York Times. And Bob, you've written quite eloquently, as Peggy has, about this campaign and about the Obama phenomenon. We see how John McCain was in a very difficult position, but you know, Barack Obama, the junior senator from Illinois, a real political neophyte in some ways on the national scene. How was he able, in your view, to be so successful?
You know, I think that there are 2 key points to this election. The first, obviously, is the economy. This is a toxic time for Republicans. But the second thing is Barack Obama has insisted from the beginning that he wanted to raise the tone of American politics. He tapped into this idea that Americans wanted something different, not just something different in terms of policy, but something different in the terms of the way politicians behaved with one another. 4 years ago, I went out to Illinois to cover his Senate race. It's kind of remarkable that it was only 4 years ago. And now he's on the verge of becoming president-elect, it looks like. But he said at the time, he used that phrase that you hear in this campaign, we can disagree without being disagreeable. He never lost his cool in this campaign. And I thought that the way that he ran his campaign compared to the attack strategy of the McCain-Palin campaign was really telling. And the American people, they wanted a lower tone. They wanted people to talk about the issues. They wanted substance, and they wanted practical approaches to the nation's politics. And you combine that with the terrible economy, and it may well have been an unstoppable situation.
So in a time of high anxiety, people gravitated towards someone who they thought had a steady hand. But Bob, how do you think Barack Obama was able to transcend race and to attract so many white Americans to his candidacy? I know that some people think it's because he bypassed sort of the traditional African-American political establishment like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. Do you think that's true?
I don't think that he transcended race. I think race is still a significant issue in this campaign. It was probably the toughest hurdle for Barack Obama to overcome. But he, you know, if you listen to the race speech that he gave in Pennsylvania, he acknowledged that race can still be a problem in this country, but you can deal with that intelligently and in a lowered tone of voice as well. And I think that he was convincing. He seemed authentic in his approach to the problems in the country across the board, including race. When he said that he wanted to reach across the divide, he wanted to reach out to Republicans, he wanted not just red states and blue states, but the United States. And implicit in that was that he wanted to reach across the racial divide as well. When I was up in New Hampshire during the Democratic primary, it was very interesting. There were very few black voters up there. And the white voters who had not decided to vote for Obama but were considering voting for Obama said, I like that message where he says there are more things that unite us than divide us. And what I thought was interesting at the time was that a lot of the voters who were considering Obama were also considering McCain. And I think that if McCain had come up with a theme, a message, that was less divisive, I think he may well have done better in this election.
And Peggy Noonan, to you, how do you think Barack Obama, it has been a very polarizing campaign. I guess most campaigns are pretty polarizing when it comes down to it. But how can he, if he's elected and gets to that magic number of 270, how can he reach out to his Republican brethren in Washington and really throughout the country and be that uniting force, given the really negativity we saw in this campaign?
I think that's an important and immediate question, Katie, in part because the very unpopularity and absence of the current president means that if Mr. Obama is elected tonight, in a way, he almost in the national imagination becomes president. And so what he says will be very significant. I'm not sure exactly what should be said, but a feeling of humility and of great honor, a remembering that we all love our country and that it is a very great nation that we all love. Those places might be somewhere where he would start, and a bit of grace and humor never hurts. He's going to be in front of 1 million people apparently tonight in Chicago. They are going to be young people, you know, and they are going to be on top of the world, and that's going to be a beautiful thing to see. And yet at the same time, he has a nation to speak to and to say, we are all together and we will get through these big changes together.
Because he's certainly inheriting some difficult problems domestically and internationally. Peggy Noonan. Peggy, thank you, and Bob Herbert, thanks to you as well. Well, if you'd like to know how close some races are tonight, take a look at the presidential vote count in Virginia, where polls closed nearly 3 hours ago. And we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to CBS News election headquarters here in New York. As we mentioned in the last hour, Barack Obama has won the Buckeye state of Ohio, a very hard-fought contest between him and John McCain. No Republican, incidentally, has ever ascended to the presidency without winning in Ohio. And according to our exit polls, 93% of residents there say the economy is bad. So clearly, the economy ruled the day. Mark Amador is our chief political consultant here at CBS News and one of the best political minds in the galaxy, I might add. Hi, Mark. Tell us a little bit more about Ohio and why Barack Obama succeeded there.
Well, if the economy is the reason why Barack Obama won, the how, I think, can be attributed to the scale of his operation there, the enormous amount of money and resources that he was able to pour into the state. He campaigned in 19 counties. That's about twice the number of counties that John Kerry was able to campaign in. He had twice the number of field offices, about 3 times the number of paid staffers as John Kerry had in 2004. If you look at a county like Butler, which is in the suburban Cincinnati area, Obama had more field organizers and staffers in that one suburban county than John Kerry had in the entire enormous 3 times the size urban county I should say, city of Columbus in 2004. And you can see in the exit polls the effect of this operation. Twice as many Ohio residents reported receiving personalized visits from Obama volunteers as they did from McCain volunteers.
And I know that Hillary Clinton won Ohio handily in the primaries, and there was concern that Barack Obama, again, wasn't connecting with these white working class voters. But according to our exit polls, Mark, he got 51% of those very voters that he's been working so hard to attract. Why didn't they go for John McCain, you think?
Well, I think a lot of it, I mean, John McCain's message on the economy doesn't seem to be resonating really anywhere in the country. A lot of it, I think, can be due to the Democratic governor who endorsed Hillary Clinton, Ted Strickland. He vouched for Obama's credentials. All right.
Mark Amador. Mark, thanks so much for your insight. It takes 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. Barack Obama is now just shy of 200 to 124 for John McCain. Still some key battleground states undecided, including a cliffhanger in Virginia.